All right. Well, talk about a hell of a return to the challenge, Aviv. I mean, the first thing I need to ask is, you know, you definitely stick out amongst all 40 cast members. This is
Uh-huh.
only your second season ever. You were one for one going in, but when you end up coming in, safe to say it's a name that modern day challenge fans haven't necessarily thought of or even heard
Right.
of as of late. So, give me your reaction to getting asked to be on season 40 and what that process was like for you to sort of like mentally
Yeah.
prepare yourself to throw yourself into the lion's den again.
I don't know that you're ever mentally prepared, even knowing what I know now. I think for me it was part of sort of like something cool I had done, in my 20s, my early 20s, right? So it's kind of like when you think back to college, you're like, hey, remember that one time we went on that cool spring break trip? Um, and that's sort of the way that the challenge was for me historically. It was like, oh, this one time at band camp. And coming back was so surreal. I mean, I had really let go. It had been almost 20 years. So I had really let go of any notion or thought that I would ever do anything, on TV or let alone the challenge again. So it happened to come about in a perfect time in my life. I don't think that I could have left this career that I built and my family and stuff had it come about earlier. So I really did feel like this was the universe's way. It was like, hey, this door's open. It happens to be the right time, which is crazy within itself, just considering my day-to-day life and responsibilities. And so it was like, here you go. You just turned 40. This is like, midlife crisis slash universe opening a door for an adventure that you never thought you'd have the opportunity to go on. And for me, my personality is the type of I try to recognize those moments and take advantage of those opportunities. And so that's the way I looked at it. And it was amazing. And I'm so happy I did it.
So the challenge, obviously, and especially since the last time you played, has become a game about relationships. And
Yep.
you had played with people like Darrell and Derek and Tina before, but it'll be interesting as we get into the bananas angels of it all to eventually talk about the
Yeah.
fact that like you end up chiefly
What
working with
bananas
people.
angels?
Yeah, the
What are you
people that
talking about?
but you're chiefly working with people that like you did not necessarily know from a hole in the
None of
ground.
them.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
talk to me about navigating that because on the one hand, yeah, you don't have relationships with the vast majority of people in the house. On the other hand, you don't necessarily have rivalries with them as some
Right.
of these other people did.
Correct. So, going in, I knew a handful of people, mostly Era One, and I didn't really know them that well because I played a game with them. So we were connected in that sense, and we've kind of reconnected a little bit before. But I definitely didn't have the same type of relationships, even with the people I did know, that other people had, right? Because they had played over time, and some of them had relationships and friendships that went outside the game. However, what I did have going in is a lot of experience of, starting just new transitions, new jobs, new companies, new teams. And so I've become over time really good at adapting. And I think, politically into an environment, a new environment, new people. And I'm a Sagittarius. I thrive. I love that. So I thrive in that environment, I think, where I have to kind of figure it out really quickly and adapt. That being said, I realized really quickly too that, as much as I was an easy scapegoat for people, and I think had the game been set up differently, I probably would have been thrown in earlier for that reason. It just so happened that we were teamed up and I lucked out because the people that I were with had stronger relationships, and that was before I had built my own relationships. Um, but yeah, I mean, I also realized, for example, on our team on Era 2, there was so much animosity and rivalries amongst, the people on our team that I could kind of be like, well, I guess you hate me less. And so that became a little bit of my strategy at the beginning. And I was really just trying to observe and get to know people and understand the history. And the thing that blew my mind was like it was like there was so much history. And when you think about it, it's 20 years of history that I wasn't part of and probably more seasons even, right? So I mean I was 12. So you've got so much history that I had no idea and was not a part of. And we're talking about people that, dated, people that were engaged, people that, whatever, you had pissed each other off 5 seasons ago, 10 seasons ago, and they were still butthurt from it. And that was their, all you need is like, hey, remember when you did this to me? And then that becomes your scapegoat to throw someone in. So it was interesting to sort of try to navigate around that. And at the beginning, it was more about like sit back, let them have their fights, observe. And then, of course, at the same time, simultaneously, I was trying to build my own relationships. And, it's this game of like, you know, play with everyone but trust no one is sort of what I say, right? So, and luckily for me, as you see, as the season continues, I do build some really strong relationships that, luckily have gone outside the game, which has been sort of a fun thing for me.
Yeah, so let's get into that because yeah, we were sort of met almost in the middle of the season of, oh yeah, there's this group of Aviv and Johnny and Rachel and Laurel that are
Yeah.
and Jenny that are really close. So how did that form? Was that something natural? Was there just like a spurring event that formed you all together?
I don't know that it was so much. I would say it was a series of events, right? I think that number one, the game sort of set the stage with the sides of the house.
Hmm.
And so you had era one and era two on one side of the house, and era three and era four on the other side of the house. So there was automatically sort of this physical divide that then becomes, right, as you're spending more time with people, you're often becoming closer to them, you're involved in their conversations. Going to the other side of the house is sort of like you're doing it on purpose and everyone's watching you. So it sort of presets almost the sides, in my opinion, predetermines them. And then, of course, I was already on Johnny and Laurel's team. We were on team two together. And, I didn't have a lot of the conflict that Laurel may have had with other people, right? Or other people had with Laurel. So I think that allowed for us to play together with a little bit better than maybe some of the other girls on my team with her. And then Rachel and I became really close very quickly. We are pretty similar. We've got similar backgrounds. People have been telling us for years, like you have to meet each other, and we just never met each other. And she was the only one left of my friends in sort of what I would consider my era, right? More so than era two. And and Jenny and I actually became friends really early on, and they don't really show this, but Jenny and I were not as involved in the drama
Hmm.
inside the house, and we spent a lot of time at the pool together. And granted, it took me at least a week to start to understand her because she talks, but she's hard to understand at first. And once we started, hanging out, that was really natural. We just started getting along really well. We also had a lot of similarities. And then I think that what happened is, Rachel tells me now that I sort of kind of ended up uniting everyone just because I was, friends with Jenny, but Johnny was also friends with Jenny. So it was like this interesting circle. We kind of all had our own relationships with each other, but then eventually it just became this alliance. And then the minute that Rachel branded it Johnny's Angels, thank you very much, Rachel Robinson, it was, I think, became a lot more formal in that
Hmm.
sense, right? So it was like, oh, the Angels, oh, the Angels, oh, the Angels. So, yeah, I don't know
So
if that answered. It was kind of a
no,
roundabout, long
Ab
answer.
absolutely does. So during the deliberation, of course, Tori tries to stir the pot a little bit by
Right.
talking about like, oh, who would Johnny say between the two of you? I mean, from your perspective, was there any sort of like hierarchy or inner workings amongst the angels? Was it more like egalitarian? Was it just, hey, we'll all go to the final together and then we'll see what happens?
Oh, we knew. I mean, here's the thing. At the end, if you're really playing the game, you realize that there's only going to be like one person you can save, basically, right? Of the opposite sex. And along with that, you know that from a numbers perspective, if you're mapping it all out, which most of us were, you know that you're most likely going to go against your friend, especially because at this point in the game, you sort of have a pendulum going. You've got two sides, right? You've got let's just call them the angels and the non-angels. So you basically are kind of shifting, right? And on the boys' side, it was kind of always going to like to Johnny and the boys, right? But then what would happen is Johnny was winning, and so Johnny would save us. So the girls' side was going, let's call her Michelle, right? To Michelle. So it was going back and forth. And I think what you see at this point, right, is sort of a break in that pendulum swing of this repetitive back and forth between the same people. And the minute that that happens, right, we knew it was going to happen eventually. It would have been really hard, um, I think, to get through the entire game without that happening. So we were very much aware. We also knew that at some point Johnny might have to decide, or one of us, might have to make decisions as well. I mean, you also have to realize that in this game, at any point, TJ can change the rules. And so, as much as you have sort of a plan in place, you also have to be prepared to shift. And, I call it pivot and adapt at any
Hmm.
point in time. And I think everyone should come in with sort of this, yes, I trust that you're not going to put me in, but at some point you might have to kind of thing, right? And I think to me, I think Jenny was always Johnny's number one.
Mm.
They have so much history. She was kicking ass, as was Rachel, but Jenny and Johnny had won together. And Jenny wasn't backing down, and Jenny has had Johnny's back for years. Rachel and Johnny were sort of a new friendship as well. And Rachel was really loyal to Johnny. But I think that, looking at that, I think Rachel would have been his number two. And I think I would have been in the number three. And the reality is that I was not performing at the same level that Jenny and Rachel were. Jenny and Rachel had already been in eliminations. And so my plan, if and when it came to that, was going to be to volunteer, which I know is fucking stupid, especially at the end of the game. But to be honest, we had all gotten so close, um, that it was like, of course I'm gonna do that, and of
Mm.
course, like, uh, if it needed to happen, I think I cared more about my relationships at that point. I struggle with that loyalty thing a little bit. So
You mentioned Michelle. I'd be remiss, of course, not to bring up what happened a couple of episodes
yeah,
ago on the bus, because I know you also talked on a podcast appearance about how, like, it actually, that my blow might have actually happened in a moment that wasn't necessarily linked to what we saw on
right.
camera. So, I mean, we obviously heard Johnny speak up a lot in the moment about his reaction to it. You have that moment
Sure.
with Michelle and Olivia later on. So, talk to me about your perspective on how that all went down and how that affected your relationship with Michelle in particular.
Okay. So the internet was going wild, by the way. I
Oh
love
my
it.
God. Yeah. And for
Like,
multiple
this is
reasons. Listen, when it
interesting. I'm
comes to
gonna
the
have to
feats, it's
Google. I did. I went on. I was like, I need to Google exactly what footsies is because now I'm confused because I didn't think that was as sexual as everyone thought. Um, so first of all, obviously there's clips and there's editing. And we had this running thing about feet. Johnny's got a foot fetish. I don't understand foot fetishes. I don't have one. I think you have to have one to really get it. But especially after these challenges, right? You're like disgusting. The last thing you want to do is touch feet. But anyway, the part that they showed of us playing footsies was actually a joke that we had done like after. So he had tapped
Mm.
me with his foot. Michelle made a comment. Then, him and Michelle were already fighting like nonstop. Like they were fighting off the bus. Everyone got on the bus. It was still like, when you sit down and you're just like, there's tension everywhere. That's what it was like. And he attacked me. Michelle made a comment. And then him and I sometimes act like two little kids. And I feed into his childlike behavior. And we were sort of like making fun of the situation. And so that's the footage that they used was actually us afterwards, touching feet like that to make fun of it. That being said, it was heat in the moment. I know people were also giving like Rachel heat for not responding or smiling or
Mm.
something. I mean, number one, people just have to realize that like there's clips from different, they piece together different clips to make it look a certain way. Now, that being said, like you can't not help like anyone that's taking Johnny super seriously, like you're not going to get along with him. because he does come off like a huge douchebag. But if you could just be like, oh my God, you're being stupid or you're a child or, and giggle at sort of his antics, I think that's sort of what Rachel, Jenny, and I were able to do that not everyone could do, right?
Hmm.
So it's just this moment that blew up. It was totally between them. I got sort of roped in just because of this one thing. And then Johnny got defensive and then Michelle got defensive, and it just continued to pile up. And both Rachel and I, like, why would we get involved? That it was so dumb to begin with that it was like everyone knew that they were just doing their thing because they'd been doing it all season. And frankly, without the two of them, they kind of are the storyline from the beginning. So,
Yeah. Well, I mean, listen, even outside of that, with the plantar fasciitis as well, Aviv, it was all about like a story of feet for you for the second half
oh
of
my
this
God,
season.
it was so funny because I'm like, we got to start like a only feet fans page or something. Like, what are we
Now,
gonna do
now
with
you're a
this?
true challenger, Aviv. When you're bringing that up, you have now fully entrenched yourself
Well,
as
listen,
the.
like as a mom, like I can't just do OnlyFans, but like maybe. So,
Well, whatever it was, I'm glad you put one foot in front of the other through some arduous circumstances to make your way through as much of the season as you did.
yeah.
Again, such a welcome return to the challenge after such a long
Thank
time.
you.
And it was such a great opportunity to get to chat with you as well about all your perspective on everything and really acclimating yourself to this very new situation. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat, and I wish you and the family nothing but the best.
Thank you, Mike. You too.
Of course, you have a good one. Bye bye.
You too. Bye.